From the Lowline project to the Legree Bridge to the very latest on short-term rentals, I sit down one-on-one with City of Charleston Councilman Bill Moody for the special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Well, Councilman Moody, it is so good to see you.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. I've been going on a year when I did the interview over at your house.
I guess a couple years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
When I was running last time.
That's right. And since that time, there's so much going on right now.
We got a lot going on in the city, that's for sure.
What is it like to be you, a city councilman?
Some days it's pretty nice. Some days it's not so good. You know, it depends on what the issues are, whether or not we're making progress, whether or not we're backing up, in my opinion. You know, I love to solve problems. And when you're working at solving problems, that's kind of what, that's the way my practice always worked. We all have problems, so it's not bemoaning the fact that you got a problem, it's how do you do something about it. So, and that's what I enjoy doing, is solving problems for the city, but more specifically for maybe West Ashley, or maybe more specifically, District 11.
You talk about those issues. Let me take you to the obvious. This is the headline from the Postal Courier from last night. It says this: Charleston City Council approves plan to help fund Lowline Ashley River pedestrian bridge. And a person from Facebook, Kevin Lee, said this on the Postal Courier's feed. He says this: everyone was aware of the Lowline, but the pedestrian bridge hasn't been presented to the public. He also goes on to say this: at this point, we have no idea if the city understands what all of this might involve. So was this presented to the public?
Well, the low line or the
pedestrian bridge?
The bike ped
Right.
across the west side.
Right.
Look, there was presented to council 4 or 5 years ago the closing of the lane.
Right.
And when you sit down and look at all of the components of closing the lane, that to me made no sense. I wasn't opposed to a bike and pedestrian lane.
Okay.
I just was opposed to that particular decision. And I still think it's a horrible decision to make that. And for our local newspaper, you brought up the bike and couriers, my son likes to call them. I mean, they were pushing this thing, and they made the argument, well, it was only going to add a minute to your time. And when you look at what they did, when they measured that minute, they measured it basically from Wesley Drive across the bridge, okay? And I challenge you to go to any McDonald's or go to Costco where they've got 4 lanes open and close one of those lanes, or, you know, and they're measuring the time from when you come up to the register and to where you get through.
Right.
And then you close one of those, and then you measure that same time from when the lady starts taking your stuff out of your basket to when you get through.
Right.
There's very little difference in that time. Right. But those people in the back of the store or back of the line that are having to wait 30 and 40 minutes to get to that point, that's the real problem. And they just ignored that. Also, the access was not good. I think they had a plan all along to maybe, I mean, they started out with a separate bridge. That was their first proposal. And they were going to add it to the bridge or hang it off of the bridge. Right. But the drawbridge couldn't work. It's so obsolete, so old, that it would not open and close with any more weight on it. So that's why that didn't work. So they said, well, we're going to put bicycles on it, so we're just going to take a lane. We don't care about James Island. We don't care about Johns Island. We don't care about those people down in Carolina Bay that have to spend 30 or 40 minutes getting across that bridge every morning. That's really what they said. And I said, I'm not going to look at it that way.
And then, obviously, the big topic right now is Lowline. That's going to become a reality soon. How real is it?
Soon may be an inappropriate word.
But how real is it to you? I mean,
look, there's a lot of people working on that low line. It's abandoned railroad track. In my District 11, which is part of West Ashley, we have the Greenway and we have the Bikeway. Both of those are abandoned railroad tracks. Both of them. I mean, to have those kind of amenities in an area of your city is really quite important. So I'm a fan of the low line.
okay.
But what was presented to us 6 months ago was, we want you to spend, or we're going to spend $17 million to buy all this property. We want the city to put $12 million into it. And oh, by the way, when you put all that money in, we can't guarantee the title. In other words, they were asking us to spend $12 million of taxpayers' money to buy a piece of property that we couldn't get clear title to. And so we said, no, we're not going to do that. It wasn't that we were opposed to the Lowline. It was we were not going to put the taxpayers' money in jeopardy like that. They came back. They worked on it. They came back with a plan that says we're not going to buy all of that. We're going to buy basically 1.7 acres, or 1.7 miles of the bed. And it's part of the Gateway TIF.
Right.
And the Lowline, the Friends of the Lowline are going to they're going to buy it for $5 million, $5.1 million, and they're going to sell it to the city for $2.5 million.
Okay.
So they're going to raise half of it, we're going to spend half of it, and we're going to get a clear title. And so that was in our real estate committee. We had that discussion on Monday.
Right.
And then we're going to buy a couple other pieces of property too, but we've got the money to buy that $2.5 million. It'll come out of the Gateway TIF. The TIF has done much better than we thought.
Okay.
So we got extra money in there. It has to be spent in that area. It can't be spent West Ashley or James or Johnson or Daniel Island. It's got to be spent right there. So that's a good use of that money. And then we're going to buy another little piece of property for some affordable housing. Okay. And we've got an option, I guess would be one way of putting it, on some other property. It could be a bus transit, rapid transit future project with CARTA for that. So that was where we came. But we still had a problem with that. As you're probably aware, the intersection of Hugie and King Street, I mean, you get a little rain, it floods, okay? I mean, you get a lot of rain, it really floods.
Yeah.
And so this low line was only a half a block from that intersection.
Right.
And I raised the point at Monday night at the Real Estate Commission. I said, we're going to spend $2.5 million on a bike path. Are the people that live around there, are they going to be upset if we spend $2.5 million, if we didn't spend that $2.5 million on fixing their drainage? And I said, my answer would be, we better fix that drainage if we're going to buy this bike path. And the interesting thing to me, when I got through reading the document, the memorandum of agreement, that agreement didn't have the word drainage in it anywhere. It said that low line could be used for bike and all kinds of other uses, but it didn't say anything about drainage. And so when I raised the question, the Friends of the Low Line were there, they said, well, we didn't intend that. And so between Monday and Tuesday, they changed the agreement that it could be used to alleviate the drainage. So now we've got the opportunity, we own the right-of-way, the low-line right-of-way. We can go in there, solve some drainage problems, and then put the bike path on top of it. And then we got both. So, you know, a lot of people look at it and say things, and they don't know all the ins and outs of the whole thing. But that's the way our system works. You know, you're asking me about it. I'm glad to explain it.
Oh, thank you. And I want to go to this Charleston City paper cover story from September 27th. And it says this: short on time, the race to find equity and accountability for short-term rentals. How much time do you guys have before short-term rentals become an issue here?
Well, it's already an issue. And it's been an issue.
Okay.
And we've appointed a commission to look at it, and I'm very, I think these people have done a good job of looking into all the aspects of it. Here's my biggest problem with short-term rentals. I rent from VRBO. I mean, I rent from those things when I go off, so I'm part of that problem. But here's my real problem. You know where I live. You know where my house is. I got a beautiful piece of property, a lot of acreage, beautiful home there, and I could turn that into a short-term rental. I mean, I could just put, I could go somewhere else that's right on the marsh, and, you could have a wedding there, matter of fact, I've had 3 weddings in my house over the years. But it's available for you to have this kind of a venue there. I do not believe that on several different fronts that is appropriate. My neighbors on either side or across the street from me, they bought a house there to live in. And what I will have done if I did something like that is that I would have created a commercial operation right in the middle of a subdivision. I don't believe that's correct. Now, I have a friend that lives in San Francisco. He and his wife have a gorgeous house downtown, and my wife and I have been out there to visit them, and they have an Airbnb. They live upstairs, downstairs. They got 2 bedrooms, a bath, living room, dining room. Now, they won't rent that unless they're there. So it's almost when we go out there, we stay with them, but we stay in their Airbnb. And so I don't have a problem if somebody wants to rent out a part of their house and they're there and they're kind of like entertaining guests. They know there's not going to be a party there, a lot of noise or whatever. I don't have any problem with, somebody's got a big house, and in order to maintain that house, they rent it, from time to time. I know that places like Augusta, where the Heritage, Hilton Head or the Masters, people actually leave their house and rent it for a week, make a lot of money off of it just for that 1 week of the golf tournament.
Right.
I don't really have as much problem with that, but it's only for a week. It's not every week. So whenever you do it every week, you basically move away from that and all the time and nobody there. You basically move away from a short-term rental into a commercial operation. And, so we've got to do whatever it is to get the platforms like Airbnb and VRBO and those platforms. They have to cooperate with us. The way the people advertise, they need to have a number or a business license number or something that lets us know in the city whose property that is, who's renting it. So we got a little bit of work to do. I know it's coming before the Planning Commission, and they'll vet it, and then it'll come to City Council. So I think everybody's on council has just been watching. I asked the mayor to put a specific person on that I trusted and that had a good business sense and would know, kind of how to do it. And I stay in touch with him very frequently and talk about where this thing is going. So they put a lot of effort into it. So we'll see what happens.
I got to move from short-term rentals to Dean Riegel. Obviously, he is under controversy now about where he really resides. Some people say he lives in West Ashley. Some people say he lives in Somerville. I know a lot of the council members I talk to would say, hey, this is a complicated issue we just cannot deal with until after the election. Where are we with Dean Riegel and his residency, in your mind?
Well, when it came before us, the law basically says you have to reside in the district, and that if you move out of the district, that you forfeit your seat. Well, then you got to define what's forfeit and what's the procedure. There was a whole list of things that I'm aware of that happened to Dean with his finances, his wife's health, a whole bunch of stuff, his employment. It was kind of a perfect storm. So, in my heart, I was sympathetic to his plight. But that doesn't relieve the issue of you got to live in your district. So I think what he did was he moved to Somerville where his son had a house. So he, in effect, moved out of the district and forfeited his seat. Now, in order for us to do anything about that, we had to have basically a trial and a hearing. And we talked about this at our September meeting. And so, you got to go through this legal process to basically declare the seat vacant. My position was, and I called our attorney up at our city council meeting, and I asked Ms. Cowell, I said, Ms. Cowell, what happens if we go through this trial period, and what happens to Mr. Riegel? Is he able to stay on the city council? And what happens to his votes if he is in fact forfeited his seat? Does he get to vote on stuff? And if he votes on stuff, and let's say we had a draw, a 7-6 vote, so you have to throw his out. Then we got a 6-6 vote, the mayor's voted, and he can't vote to create a tie.
Right.
So it creates all these issues. I said, what can we do? She said, well, Mr. Riegel will be able to occupy his seat de facto as though he had been elected and everything until the election. So I basically told my colleagues on council that I was just going to let the voters decide.
Okay.
That I wasn't going to waste city resources or our lawyers' time or our time and going through this when he was going to be able to sit right in that seat and vote regardless of what we did. And let the voters in District 10 say, yeah, he lied, no, he didn't lie, we want him to represent us, whether or not he was able to get to all the meetings, his attendance wasn't all that good. I don't know whether he had to, drive to somewhere. He couldn't make some of the earlier meetings like Ways and Means and stuff like that. So I didn't want to get into all that unless we were going to have a trial. And so that was kind of what the position I took. Let the voters decide. And we've got some really good people. Miss Massey that's running for that seat. She's a very good candidate. So we'll let the voters decide.
And Harry Griffin as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Describe to me in one word, and this is the commercial loading zones for Charleston.
Those P tags, that's a fraud. I mean, just basically somebody that gets a tag on their car, on their Porsche or on their BMW and parks in a loading zone, because all they got to do is they got to go to the highway department and tell them, I want a P tag and here's $5, and they get one. Those are loading zones for commercial vehicles. They're not parking spots for everybody that has a P tag.
Okay.
If you have a P tag and I don't, you shouldn't be parking there unless you're a commercial operation. So we passed some rules last night that said if you've got a P tag, you've got to have some kind of markings on your vehicle that says it's a business vehicle.
Okay.
And there's a little controversy there, but we can work through that.
Okay.
I think through the business license or whatever, we can, sometimes you might look at something and say, well, that's just a guy parking there or a lady parking there that, just to go shopping. But you don't know. Maybe that's an attorney or a CPA that's got to unload boxes of stuff to go into the courthouse or something. They need to, go into an office or something. So it might not look like a commercial operation, but it is. And all we want is if it's a commercial operation, use the commercial parking zone. If you're going there to shop, get into the other places and don't abuse that P tag. But people do it all the time. I think the real solution is to go to the highway department and let them certify that this is a commercial vehicle.
Okay. Well, Councilman Bill Moody, thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate this.
Good. That easy?
Yes, sir.